I worked night security at a small liberal arts college in Vermont. Nothing glamorous, no campus police badge or tactical gear, just a walkie, a ring of keys, and a long list of empty halls to patrol. Most of the time, it's boring. Honestly, I liked it that way. Peace and quiet suited me, especially in the winter, when most students went home and the buildings were half empty or completely closed off. That stillness made the long shifts easier. This happened last winter, mid-January, I think, a Tuesday night. I was covering the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift in one of the oldest dorms on campus. 3 floors, creaky floors, radiators that hissed like they were angry at the world. Students say it's haunted, but honestly, every old building in New England comes with that rumor. I didn't believe any of that. Not until that night. It had started snowing earlier that evening. By the time midnight rolled around, the whole campus was blanketed in white. Not a sound outside. No cars. No foot traffic. Even the wind had calmed down. Just snowflakes falling in the light of the old street lamps and the quiet groans of the buildings settling. I remember thinking it was beautiful, in that eerie, untouched kind of way. I made my usual rounds. First floor, then third, then second. I always save the second floor for last because it's where most of the complaints usually come from when students are on campus. Weird noises, flickering lights, that kind of thing. Maintenance had looked into it 100 times and always blamed the wiring. But that night, the place was empty. At least it was supposed to be. Around 2 a.m., I was walking the second floor hallway. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The place smelled like coal dust and heating oil. I checked each room, one by one. Most had doors propped open to air them out during break. All empty, just as expected. But when I passed room 212, I stopped. The door was cracked open about 3 inches. Not wide, but just enough to see inside. The light was off. No sound. But I was sure that room was supposed to be vacant. I even pulled out my clipboard and double-checked the roster for the winter break dorms. 212 was listed as unoccupied. Had been since before Christmas. I knocked lightly and waited. No answer. I pushed the door open a little farther, just enough to get a better look. That's when I saw him. A man was sitting at the desk by the window, facing away from me. He looked like any regular college guy. Dark hoodie, jeans, short brown hair. I didn't recognize him, but that wasn't unusual. I don't know every student by face. For all I knew, maybe he'd gotten permission to stay late, and someone forgot to update the records. Still, I asked, "Hey," I said, standing in the doorway, "are you supposed to be in here?" No response. He didn't turn around, didn't even move. I waited a second, then stepped inside and asked again, more firmly this time, "Sir, I need to see your ID." That's when he stood up. No words. Just stood up, slowly, and walked toward the far corner of the room, still facing away from me. I flipped the light switch by the door. The room was empty. There was no one there. No guy. No jacket on the chair. No backpack. Nothing. Just the desk, the window, and the chair he'd been sitting in, still slightly spinning. I stared at that chair for a solid 10 seconds, heart hammering, trying to make sense of what I just saw. I even walked into the room, scanned every corner. Nothing. No movement. The closet was open and empty. The window was locked from the inside. I checked it twice. There was absolutely nowhere he could have gone. I backed out of the room, closed the door, and locked it. I didn't care if protocol said I was supposed to file a report first. I needed to put a physical barrier between myself and whatever just happened. When I got back to the security office, I went straight to the monitors. Every entrance and hallway in the building is covered by security cameras. The only way in is through the main lobby, which requires a key card, even for me. I scrubbed through the footage between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. No one entered. No one exited. I even pulled video from earlier in the day, just in case someone slipped in when the building was still open. Nothing. No one matching the guy's description had been in that building for at least a week. At that point, I didn't know what to do. I wrote a basic note in the activity log. Just at the door to 212 was ajar, and I secured it. I left out the rest. If I reported what I actually saw, it would have either been ignored, laughed off, or worse, turned into a running joke. But I know what I saw. I saw a man sitting at that desk. I saw him stand up. I saw the chair spin. And I know for a fact, he wasn't supposed to be there. I thought maybe I dreamt it, that my brain had glitched out from too many long, quiet shifts. But then I started thinking about the details that didn't make sense, like the footprints. I remembered seeing some of the snow outside that night, leading to the building, but not away from it. Just a single set. No one had used that side entrance for days. I assumed it was mine, but now, I'm not so sure. The image of that guy, his back to me, staring out the window, kept replaying in my mind, over and over. The way he didn't move, the slow turn, the walk into nothing. It wasn't just a shadow. It wasn't a reflection or a trick of the light. He was there, and then he wasn't, like a frame skipped in real life. I've since done a little digging into the history of that dorm building. Turns out, it was originally used as a convalescent space during World War II when the campus loaned some of its space to the military. A temporary hospital wing was set up on the second floor. A few veterans have even claimed the building has a residual energy about it. The stories aren't common, but they're out there. I'm still working security, still doing overnights. But I don't walk past room 212 alone anymore. I walk the first and third floors like normal. But when I get to the second floor, I stop at the top of the stairs, flashlight on, walkie in hand, and I skip it, because whatever I saw that night, he wasn't supposed to be there, and I'm not sure he ever left. If you enjoy real, unsettling stories like this, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. These aren't just ghost stories. Sometimes there's something stranger, something that slips through for just a moment, then vanishes before you can explain it. This happened about 5 years ago, back when I was still living in Minneapolis. I was 26, single, and just getting back into dating after a long relationship had ended. Nothing out of the ordinary. I wasn't into apps much, so I'd met someone the old-fashioned way, through a friend. Her name was Natalie. She was smart, quick-witted, and had this calm way of carrying herself that made it easy to talk to her. We had been seeing each other for maybe 3 weeks. Not serious yet, but we were spending time together regularly. We grabbed drinks a few times, and once we had dinner at this cozy Thai restaurant near her apartment in Uptown. The place was nothing fancy, barely 10 tables maybe, and dimly lit with warm, reddish lighting and quiet instrumental music playing overhead. The kind of place you go to when you want something relaxed but personal. We had planned to meet there again on a Wednesday night. I remember that part clearly because I had almost canceled due to a long day at work, but decided to suck it up and go. We agreed to meet at 7 p.m. It had been snowing early that day, but by the evening the roads were clear and the air had that sharp, clean winter feel. I parked about a block away, walked in a little before 7 o'clock, and found the restaurant exactly how I remembered it. Small, cozy, welcoming. There were only a few people already eating, scattered across different tables. I told the host I was meeting someone, and he just smiled, gestured to the room, and said, "Pick any open table." I chose a spot near the front window. Warm light, good view, easy for Natalie to spot me. I texted her right away. "Here," just sat down near the window. She responded almost instantly. "Already inside. Where are you?" That made me pause. I glanced around the room. There were maybe 4 other people there, a couple by the window opposite me, an older man eating alone, and 2 people chatting near the kitchen. But no Natalie, no red sweater, no familiar face. I texted back, "Are you sure you're here? I'm sitting at the table closest to the window by the front." A few seconds later, she replied, "I'm at the table by the back wall. Red sweater, remember?" That message actually made me laugh out loud. Half out of confusion, half from the strange timing of it all. I stood up, turned around, and walked slowly toward the back wall. It was empty. No one was there. The table she described, against the brick wall next to the hanging plant, was completely unoccupied. The silverware was still wrapped in napkins. No water glass, No coat on the chair, no signs anyone had been there recently. Now I was getting weirdly uncomfortable. I texted her again. I'm literally looking at that table. You're not there. No reply. I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. Now, at this point, I figured maybe she was in a different Thai restaurant nearby. Minneapolis has a few. Or maybe she'd gone to the wrong place, and we had miscommunicated. I walked back to my table, sat down, and waited a few more minutes. Still nothing. So I did what I should have done earlier. I asked the host. Hey, I said, I'm meeting someone. She said she's already here. Red sweater, early 20s, brown hair? Have you seen anyone like that? He looked confused. No, he said, shaking his head. You're the only one who's come in for a while. That response sent a weird chill down my back. I wasn't scared, but I was officially unsettled. Something about it just didn't sit right. I thanked him, paid for a Thai iced tea I didn't even finish, and walked outside into the cold. I sent her one last message. Hey, are you okay? This is getting weird. I figured that would be the end of it. Maybe she'd been running late. Maybe something came up. I drove home, tried to shake off the weirdness, and told myself I'd probably laugh about it later. But then, about an hour later, just past 8:30, Natalie texted back. What are you talking about? You never showed up. I stared at the screen for a while. I replied, wait, what? I was there. I sat by the window and even asked the host about you. She responded almost immediately. I was sitting by the window, too, for over 30 minutes. I even showed the waiter your picture and asked if you'd arrived. He said no one matching your description had come in. I didn't know what to say. We spent the next hour texting back and forth, comparing every detail. She was at the exact same restaurant. She arrived at the same time, 7 p.m. sharp. She sat by the window. She waited. She even had a receipt time-stamped at 7:48 p.m. I had one to 7:42 p.m. Same restaurant, same time, same setup. And yet, neither of us saw the other. Even weirder, we both described the same layout, the same decor, the same number of people sitting around. And both of us had asked the host or server about the other, and both were told we were the only person waiting. It was like we had been in two identical versions of the same place, like two overlapping frequencies that couldn't quite sync. Same location, same time, but we just didn't connect. We even tried to rationalize it. Maybe we were somehow both in two different Thai restaurants that looked similar, but the receipts matched. The name, the address. We even sent each other selfies we took at the table while waiting. Same furniture, same wallpaper. We were there, together, but not. We did eventually meet up a few days later. We laughed about it, sure, but not the kind of laugh you get when something's actually funny. More like the kind where you're trying to mask how unsettled you really are. We kept dating for a couple more months after that, but the weirdness never really left us. Every now and then, one of us would bring it up, usually after a few drinks or a late-night conversation. We never found an explanation. And even now, 5 years later, I still think about that night. Not because of what did happen, but because of what didn't. We were in the same place, at the same time, and we never saw each other. If you're into true stories like this, ones that leave you unsettled, questioning your memory, your reality, then hit that like button and subscribe. Because sometimes the scariest stories aren't about ghosts. They're about the moments where the world stops making sense, where everything seems normal, until it's not. This happened during my first year living in Chicago. I had just moved there for work. Fresh start, new city, new apartment. Everything was unfamiliar at the time, but I was settling in okay. Like most people in their 20s navigating a new city, I relied heavily on public transit, especially the bus system. I lived off a reliable line, the 156 LaSalle. It ran from a loop through River North, past Lincoln Park, and up to Belmont. Nothing fancy. It just happened to drop me off right across the street from my apartment. After a few weeks, riding that bus became muscle memory. I'd catch it around 5:15 p.m. every evening, ride for 12 stops, and get off without even thinking. Same route, same scenery, same tired faces. Until one night in November. That night still unsettles me. I've told a few people about it since, but it always feels like I'm leaving something out because I can't explain what happened. It was a Thursday. Work had run late. I remember because I was annoyed. My plan was to grab dinner on the way home, but by the time I left the office, it was already 5:23. I remember checking my phone as I jogged the 2 blocks to my usual stop. It was dark already, and the wind had that biting, early winter chill that Chicago's famous for. Just as I reached the bus stop, I saw a bus approaching. The digital display on the front read 156, LaSalle. Perfect. I flagged it down, stepped aboard, nodded to the driver, and made my way toward the back, my usual spot near the window. There were maybe 3 or 4 other people on board. That was the first thing that struck me as odd. The 156 is usually packed during rush hour. I brushed it off. Maybe I had just missed a busier one, or maybe people had left early because of the cold. No big deal. The ride started like any other. Familiar turns. The same robotic chime every time someone pulled the stop cord. I stared out the window, zoning out the way you do when you've done something 100 times. I wasn't looking for anything weird, but then I noticed subtle differences. The bus felt unusually dim. The overhead lights were on, but they had this faint yellow flicker, like an old motel hallway. The colors felt off too, like the world outside the windows had lost a little saturation. The air inside was quiet, almost muffled, even though I could see people shifting in their seats. It was the kind of difference you don't immediately notice until it starts to pile up. About 10 minutes in, I looked out and saw something that really caught me off guard. There was a gas station I passed almost every day on my ride home, kind of run down, with a blue and yellow awning and a row of vending machines near the front. But this time it wasn't there. In its place was a laundromat, old signage, flickering fluorescent lights, and people milling inside. I blinked a few times, thinking I'd just mistaken the location. But then a block later, another change. A small bodega I'd been to more than once. Totally boarded up. Graffiti on the windows, like it had been closed for years. I leaned forward a little in my seat, suddenly alert. The buildings looked almost right, familiar shapes and layouts, but the storefronts were wrong. Like I had been dropped into a slightly altered version of the neighborhood I thought I knew. I started feeling genuinely uneasy. I spotted a guy a few rows ahead of me, mid-20s, dark jacket, earbuds in, looked normal. I leaned forward and asked, "Hey, this is the 156, right?" He turned to me slowly, almost like I'd interrupted a dream. "No," he said, confused. "This is the 148. I stared at him for a second. "The 148? He nodded and turned back around. I immediately stood up and looked toward the front of the bus. Sure enough, the digital display above the driver now read, 148, Clarendon/Michigan. My heart dropped. I know I saw 156 when I got on. I watched the sign change as the bus pulled up. I even remember thinking how lucky I was to catch it so close to my original time. I'd been so sure I didn't even check again once I sat down. But now here I was on a completely different bus line. I walked to the front and asked the driver, "Hey, did this bus switch routes or something?" He didn't even look at me. "Nope. Been on the 148 all evening. You must have caught the wrong one, buddy." But that didn't make sense. I know the route maps. The 148 doesn't come anywhere near the street where I caught the bus. Their paths don't overlap at all. Still, I nodded and sat back down, but I was rattled. The streets outside weren't familiar anymore. Buildings I'd never seen. Street names I didn't recognize. I checked the GPS on my phone. That's when it got worse. According to Google Maps, I was nearly 2 miles west of where either the 148 or 156 routes ever ran. Not just off track, completely outside the zones those buses traveled. I double-checked, zoomed in, checked bus stops. Neither line should have passed through where I was. I stared out the window as the bus pulled up to another unfamiliar stop. I grabbed my stuff and got off. The cold hit me hard, windy and sharp, like Chicago always is in November. I looked around. Old brick buildings, shuttered shops, a liquor store on the corner. I had no idea where I was. And then the bus pulled away behind me, brake lights blinking through the dark, and disappeared into the distance. I stood there for almost 15 minutes, checking maps, trying to figure out how I'd ended up there. I even checked the bus tracker app the CTA provides. Neither the 148 nor 156 showed any recent stop near my location. It was like whatever I had just ridden wasn't real. Eventually, I called an Uber and rode home in silence, staring out the window, trying to retrace the route in my head. But none of it made sense. Not the bus number, not the route, not the weird light or the altered buildings. I never figured out what happened that night. No one believes me when I tell it exactly the way it happened. People say I must have read the number wrong or gotten on a wrong bus without noticing. But I know what I saw. The sign said 156. I watched it approach. I got on without a second thought. Everything was normal until it wasn't. I don't think I hallucinated it. I wasn't tired, drunk, or under any influence. I replayed it in my head 100 times. It's like, for a brief moment, I slipped into a version of the city that wasn't quite mine. Familiar but wrong. Close but distorted. And then, just as quietly, I slipped back out. If this story creeped you out or made you question reality, hit that like button and subscribe for more true horror and glitch stories. Because sometimes the scariest experiences aren't the ones you can see. They're the ones you can't explain.